Zambia. She went to 2 years of Bible college and then is attending church in Wenatchee at Brother Mears. That's where my in-laws are. My wife's parents live in Wenatchee. So it's kind of a natural settling ground for our kids when they come home. She came back to Zambia for 9 months. Both those girls, she led them to Christ. Those two girls have led 7 others to Christ just about 2 months ago. And so it's just growing, and it's growing fast. And how many times do you want to do that? We had 78 under 12 years old in church last Sunday. When I said on there 40 to 60 kids, they've got upwards of 90 kids coming in under 12 years old doing football. And they preach to those kids. Those kids are getting saved. They're getting born again. They're being discipled. Those young people, they come to church. They spend 2 to 3 hours a day in Bible study at church when they get off of school. They go to church for 3 hours in the morning. We don't do an evening and a morning. We do it all in one shot because people walk for so long and there's such a distance they have to travel. It's not get in the car and drive for 10 minutes. It's walk for an hour. So we do everything up front. And anybody that wants to, they come out to my house. My wife makes rice and potatoes and a bunch of inexpensive food. We feed everybody, and then we do Bible study. From the time church ends, they get on a bus. We get there about 15 minutes before they do because the bus is a little bit slower. I usually try to lay down for like 10 minutes and just catch my breath. And then we go for another 4 to 5 hours with questions until 5 o'clock, and they go home. So we do about 8 hours a day of church on Sunday. So my brother, preachers in the United States, are you okay preaching 2 or 3 times? I'm like, it'll be okay. And it's like the problem is let's go too long. And how many times do you want to do that? No, I mean, how many times? Do you want to do it just one time? Do you want to do it 10 times in Lusaka? We got 200,000 people growing every year. There's places with no church in Lusaka because it's growing so fast the churches can't keep up. How many churches do you want to plant? 10, 15, 20? We need men. We need men. It's no problem to go get a group of people. I mean, I can give you as many groups of people as you want, but we need men. We need men that can go. Some of these young men, you need to go. Maybe not to Zambia, but there's places like this all over the world. I just talked to a preacher down in San Diego, National City. He went to the Philippines, and he went down to Mindanao, which is a heavily Muslim area of the Philippines. And they went in and asked the police to escort them into these schools, and the schools shut these schools down so that the kids could hear the gospel. They put 1,000 kids into an auditorium and let them preach to them. And he said the kids are weeping and they're crying. They'd never heard the gospel before. And I'm thinking, man, you got to go to the Philippines. We simply do not have enough laborers for the harvest field. And that was true in the day of Jesus, and it's true today. Let no man despise thy youth. My daughter is not a Bible scholar, but you know what she can do? She can sit down with young African women. You don't need to learn a language. They all, in Lusaka, they speak English. And you know what she did? She'd just go to the church when they'd get off school. She'd just sit and talk with them. And they'd ask questions. And this question leads to this question, it leads to this question, it leads to this question, it leads to Christ. And that's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And seeing those young people, I just get really emotional when I watch those videos. It's kind of a tough time because we're leaving to go back, and everything in me wants to go back, and everything in me wants to spend more time with my kids. So let's get into the Word of God. Let's go to Luke and chapter number 20. The hardest thing being a missionary is sending your kids back to the United States. That is the hardest thing I have ever done. And it is not the same as when your kid goes to college. When I dropped my daughter off, I met her at college when she was down there. It was her second year at Heartland. And I hugged her and I drove off, and I never knew when I'd see her again. It's not like, it's okay, we'll see you at Christmas. No, we won't. We won't. We're not going to see you at Christmas. We're not going to see you at Thanksgiving. We don't know when we're going to see you again. And that has been the life of missionaries since missions began. Now, here's the reality of it. I have eternity with my daughter. I have eternity with her. But right now, there's a work that needs to be done. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is still day. For night cometh when no man can work. We have a limited time, folks. And I think the time is a lot more limited than what we think. I'll tell you, in Africa, it doesn't matter if the Lord tarries 1,000 years. The time's limited because people die over there like that. You know why they're open to the gospel? And do you know why those young people, why there's been a change since 2019 when I was here last? Do you know why there's been a change? They were smacked right in their face with their mortality. Through this pandemic, they didn't know, for the first time in their life, we had a generation of young people that were legitimately threatened with death. Now, I know it's not that bad on young people, but young people died from it. You know, it doesn't matter if a guy comes in the room and he's only got one bullet in his gun. There's 1,000 people in the room. People are going to be running like crazy people because they don't want to be the one that gets shot. And this COVID, you don't know who it's going to shoot, right? And so you've got an opportunity in the United States. I believe that, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity in Africa, no doubt. But let's get into the Word of God today, chapter 20, verse 1. And it came to pass on one of those days, as he taught the people in the temple and preached the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes came upon him with the elders. So they got the chief priests, they got the scribes, they got the elders, they got the whole gang there, right? And spake unto him, saying, Tell us, by what authority doest thou these things? Or who is he that gave thee this authority? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for just allowing us to go back to Zambia. And Lord, thank you for allowing us to go home. And truly, that's just become our home. And Father, I thank you that my son is coming to help. And I thank you for that we get a little bit of our family over there. And Father, I thank you for this passage in this church. And I just am so encouraged by their heart to go out and witness and start churches. It is a breath of fresh air, and I thank you for it, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. You know, I've thought about, all these places, they have all these conferences, and I got an idea for a conference. I will call it Authority and Money, because it's the two things that everybody likes to have preached about. Amen? No, it's not true, is it? Nobody likes that stuff. It'd be like me and him. We'd be the only ones there. We have to preach. It'd be like empty. We don't like to talk about authority, and we don't like to talk about money. And I've seen these preachers, and they go to these churches, and they're like, bless God, I use my King James Bible, and they just gin everybody up. And look, I love the King James. I don't use anything else. The only reason I use an NIV is to show people how worthless it is. And that's so I'm like 100% on board with the King James. And I know that you probably are too, but I really find that this concept of authority, it's not so much as a popular concept. Like when you're driving down the road and you see those beautiful green or blue and red lights behind you, that white car, and he pulls you over. And stuff. Like I was driving through Pacific the other day, down in Algona Pacific, and I just kind of just blew through a stoplight. Just stop sign. It's at night. There's no cars out there, and we're it's a residential neighborhood. It's not like anybody was in danger, but I didn't do a California stop. I did a Zambia stop. And a Zambia stop is when you're speeding, right? You're speeding, and then you slow down to approximately a little bit lower than the speed limit, and then just go through it. And so I didn't get pulled over by one cop. I got pulled over by two. And the one guy's up, he's like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I'm like, well, yeah, I went right through that stoplight. And he's like, well, why would you do that? And I said, look, you got to understand, I live in Africa. And to survive, you have to drive like a maniac. Now, the good news is I've only got about 3 more weeks and I'm leaving again. So you don't have a whole lot of worry about me. And my wife is constantly on me not to drive like a maniac. And then the lady cop comes up. She's like, yeah, man, that was so obvious. I could see it clear down the block. I'm like, yeah, it was. Absolutely. They let me go, and I was thankful for that. And, if you're nice to them, right, if you show them some respect, it's not like they're just picking on you, right? There was this guy in my church when I was a pastor. He's like, do the police pull you over? I'm like, yeah, when I'm speeding. Well, I think they're targeting me. I'm like, well, are you breaking the law? Well, yeah, but like, it just might be that they're pulling you over because you're breaking the law. That's their job. But people have a hard time with that. I mean, people really do. And once you overcome that, you can have a better relationship with the police. But you know that feeling you get when those lights come on and they're behind you? Is that a positive feeling? Should it be a positive feeling? Shouldn't we be like, you know what? I'm so thankful God has given me authority in my life to make sure that I obey the law so that the United States won't end up driving like Zambia, which is insane. Because here's the other side. We don't really have police out there. I mean, they have police checkpoints. They don't have cars. So they got some guy out there, and he's like, they got a guy with a radar gun. He's got a little tripod. He's standing in the road. You come around the corner, and he's like, all right, white car. The guy comes out with his gloves and his uniform and his stick, and he's like, you pull over. Man, if you don't pull over, they will lose their minds. I mean, they will hunt you down like you're one of the big five, and they're going to get your license plate, and they will find you. I always pull over. I don't play those games. I've known people that have played those games. They don't like it. But you know, really, it's like this. In Zambia, we don't have the level of law enforcement that we do here. But so this truck is passing. This is last week. Passes, and another truck, it's his lane, right? And this guy expects this guy to drive off the side of the road. He drives off the side of the road, hits a girl, breaks both her legs. She pushed her little brother out of the way, and this kid goes to a church from a friend of mine up in Ndola. She goes to an Independent Baptist church up there. She's in the hospital with 2 broken legs because this maniac won't follow the law. And a lot of times we look at this and we see this authority. You know, authority is a good thing. God institutes authority. God is authority. And everything operates under authority. But we have an attitude where we really don't like authority. That's probably because we're Americans. We have kind of a sordid history with kings. You know, people are like, oh, we fought for our independence. You didn't fight for your independence. You had a few guys and you harbored some rebels from Rhodesia, and England's like, yeah, sure, we're done being a colonial power. Have your independence, 1964. I'm like, that's not the way it went down in the United States. They're like, well, what happened in the United States? Oh, we got rifles and we started killing them. The Zambians are like, what in the world? I'm like, oh, yeah, even to this day. I know guys in the United States, I tell them, they've got they're like, how many guns do they have? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think they know. Like, what do you mean? Like, they've got rooms in their house that are full of guns. And Zambian's like, what in the world? Like they go to the ammo store and they're like, hey, you got this truckload of ammunition. Can I get one? And they're like, 1 box? No, a pallet. And they'll take a forklift and load that pallet and put it in the guy's pickup truck. And these Zambians are like this. They're like, because, you know, you can buy a gun in Zambia. You can buy any kind of gun you want. But you've got a permit that attaches you to that gun. And to buy ammunition, you have to take that permit in. And you can only buy like 200 rounds of shotgun ammunition a year. Now, if you shoot skeet, you get somebody to sign saying, yeah, you shoot skeet. And you're shooting, so then you can buy more. But everything's like super controlled. Nobody's going to like Big Five and buying pallets of 223 ammunition. That's just not happening. And so we've got this, and now why do we do that? Because we're like, bless God, the government never does anything again. I'm just going to take them out. And there's this spirit of nobody's going to tell me what to do. Even if they're right, they're still not going to tell us what to do. Right. And that's that fierce, independent spirit. I think that's fantastic in terms of politics and citizenry. It's just not so great when it comes to God and the Bible. It doesn't translate well from this realm to this realm. But authority is what everything's about. And this passage where Jesus begins to start to preach, and he preaches not as the scribes, but as one having what? Authority. He had this authority, this aura of authority, this presence of authority. When he walked into the room, it's like, that guy's the guy that's in charge. Now, that's probably the case because he's the guy that's in charge. You know, he kind of made everything. You know, when you make everything, you get to be in charge. It's kind of like, this is my sandbox. Amen? This is just kind of a funny story from my past. I don't even know why I'm telling this. When I lived in Anchorage, Alaska, and I was a kid, these kids came over and they would get drunk and they would try to jump on our trampoline. And I told them, I tell them, you know, hey, you can't do that. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop us? Huh? Well, I had a BB gun there. So I just grabbed the gun. I said, as a matter of fact, I am. Went up there and went whack, shot one of them in the rear. ah, he's got a gun. And then they all run away. There were some ramifications for that from them. We ended up having some problems, but nothing with anybody else. But it's that idea of authority, right? It's my sandbox. You got out of my sandbox. And we've got that attitude, don't we? It's kind of inside of us, isn't it? And so when the Pharisees, it was inside the Pharisees too. So they came to Jesus and they said, tell us, by what authority are you coming into our temple and teaching? Or who is it? Who is it that gave you this authority? That you are taking up this authority. And who is it that gave you this authority? Where do you derive your authority to come into our temple and teach our people your doctrines? Where do you get that? That's what they did. And if you notice, they didn't just like a few of them. They had the chief priests, they had the elders, they had the scribes. They got the whole gang together, and they're going to show up and they're going to call Jesus out on this issue of authority. And he answered and said unto them, I will ask you one thing, and answer me. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or men? See, he says, before I came, there was this one called John. Did his authority come from heaven? Did it come from God? Or was his authority given to him just by men? Did he come to you to get did John come to you to get his authority? Or did John get his authority from heaven? Where did John get his authority? This might help us in determining where I got my authority from, Jesus is in essence saying. And they reasoned with themselves. Now I want you to stop right there and notice that. They reasoned with themselves. That's always a bad idea. It's always, two guys can reason with themselves and justify almost anything. It is true, especially if you have teenage boys. You get two teenage boys. I've got a preacher friend, I don't know what in the world he was thinking. When he was in Bible college, he and his buddies decided it'd be a good idea to get a wrist rocket and some ball bearings and shoot windows out in Springfield, Missouri. Yeah, they reasoned with themselves. They had it all figured out. It was going to be a great idea. Well, they got in a lot of trouble over that. This reason, here's the point. You can reason anything. You can come to any conclusion you want to come to. I was listening to a guy, they were telling me about some guy they were visiting, and they're like, yeah, my ministry is to go around churches and tell them where they're wrong. And I'm like, you do know that Satan is the accuser of the brethren, right? While God may have called you this, it may not be the God of heaven. It may be the God of this earth. You may have a legitimate ministry here, but it might not be exactly the way you're thinking it's working out. You can reason among yourselves and do anything. And so they reason among themselves, saying, if we shall say from heaven, he will say, why then believed ye him not? If you say his authority came from heaven, then why aren't you following him? And then he says, if we say it was from men, all the people will stone us, for they be persuaded that John was a prophet. So here's the problem. They've got a problem with the authority of John. They want to reject it because they don't believe it came from heaven, but they can't reject it because all the people believe it went from heaven, and the people will lose their authority if they side with the people, and they will lose their authority if they say it came from heaven. If they say it came from heaven, then you've got to submit to him. If you say it came from man, the people will stone you and they won't follow you. No matter how you answer this, you're going to lose your authority. You see the problem? A lot of times people, when they're faced with something they don't want to do, and they're faced with two options that they're not willing to do, will come up with some reasoning among themselves that will get them out of that dilemma. It's like this. Let me just throw this out. This may not have any bearing on anything. I don't know. People will say, well, we can't witness here. Nobody wants to hear. Okay. I don't know if that's true or not. Go to Zambia. Everybody wants to hear. Oh, we can't go there. It's too dangerous. Okay, I get it. You just don't want to witness. You see how this kind of works? You see how this kind of works? It's kind of like, well, if that's the problem, we can solve it by doing this. Well, I don't want to do that either. Okay, I get it. Exactly. So that's what they were doing here. And they answered and they said, we can't tell whence it was. So the universal solution to reasoning among yourselves is you lie. You lie to others, but you first lie to yourself. Amen? I know nobody in here has ever done that. I've never done that. Well, you know that's, of course, not true. We've all done that. It's a trait of humanity, isn't it? We tell ourselves what we want to believe so we can live our life how we want to live it. And we don't have to be bothered by like what the Bible says. And we got churches across America that are filled with people just doing whatever it is they want to do. Isn't that true? Oh, what's wrong with a woman lesbian preacher? Well, there's like 17 things wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of problems. We had a homosexual that got saved, came to our church, and he said, well, what's wrong with having a homosexual church? I said, well, would you have a thief's church? Well, no. Well, would you have an adulterer's church? You know, all the adulterers could go there? That would be a mess. How'd you like to pastor that church? That would be a bad deal. He's like, no. I said, well, then how could you have that? He's like, well, where does it say in the Bible homosexuality is wrong? I'm like, well, how about here? How about here? How about here? How about here? And you know what he said? Man, our pastor, she's never preached any of those passages. Of course not, that's right. They're just up there reasoning among themselves, creating whatever it is they want to create so they can have it however they want to have it. And so then Jesus says, neither tell I you by what authority I do these things. Then he began to speak a parable to people, this parable. And here's the parable. A certain man planted a vineyard and led it forth to a husbandman and went into a far country for a long time. Who do you suppose that is? It's Christ. He gives this vineyard to a husbandman. And then when the season, and at the season, he sent a servant to the husbandman. And let's just stop right there so I can explain at a season. I planted 18 grapevines. I had a guy that had a vineyard. He gave me cuttings. And the way that you plant a grapevine, you take the cuttings off of the vine and you bury it. You get the cuttings in the fall, you bury it, and it's moist all winter, and they go dormant. And then about springtime, you take these cuttings out and you stick them in the ground. Put them about that far down on the ground. You cut them with an angled cut so you know which side's down, which side's up. Now somehow, each one of those little buds knows whether it's under the ground or above the ground. And if it's above the ground, it puts a leaf out. And if it's below the ground, it puts a root out. Now that in and of itself is a miracle. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. And so these root out, and then they start to send a little shoot up. And you cut all the shoots except for one, you get it up about this high. Meanwhile, what you've done is you put these grapes about this far apart. I mean, literally about this far apart. You got the main grape that comes up. You're going to train it up to a wire, and you're going to go right about 4 feet, and you're going to go left about 4 feet. And those are called, in the vineyardist terms, those are called cordons. And in the Bible terms, Jesus said, you know, I am the vine. This would be the vine, the part that comes up. Ye are the branches that go out. Okay? That's the Bible terms that they would use, the vine and the branches. Now, you put these posts in. You put about a 4-inch post in. And you put that post about 36 inches or more down in the ground. Then at the end, you get yourself a cinder block, and you wrap this vineyard wire around this cinder block, and you bury it about 30 inches or 40 inches, 33 foot deep, 2.5 to 3 foot deep. Then you fill full of rock and soil and everything else, and that goes up to this post. And then they make these little, in the U.S., they make these little cones. And you put this cone in, it has a spot for a screw. And then when you pull that wire through the cone, it's a one-way deal. So you can just reef it, and it tightens this up. And you put one on this end of the wire, one on that end of the wire, and you run it up, and that wire is thick. It's like that thick. And this wire's going across there, and you tighten this wire. You think, well, this is pretty excessive for a little vine. Well, I understand this, but when you're growing like a Concord grape that you're going to juice, you leave about 80 or 90 buds. When you're doing a table grape, you leave about 30 buds. So you got your cordon this way, your cordon this way, or your branch and your branch. You're going to leave sticks up out of that. And you're going to count how many buds there are, and you're going to leave 30 buds. That determines the production of that vine. Because each one of those buds is going to shoot out, and it's going to produce a leaf, a cluster, a leaf, and a cluster, and then it's going to produce leaf. You're going to get 2 clusters of grapes for every bud you leave on there. With a table grape, you want big fruits, you leave more, and you constrict the plant so it produces bigger. Just like apples, bigger apples, you prune them. It's pre-pruning with grapes. But do you know how many pounds of grapes, like a juicing grape, like a Concord, each one of those vines is going to produce? 90 pounds. 90 pounds. So you figure, you know, I had 6 vines in a row. So you're talking about 500 to 600 pounds of grapes on that wire. Entire rows of grapes will get blown over, and those stumps, those posts will break in a commercial vineyard in a windstorm, because there's so much weight on those. It's a huge process. And here's the other thing that happens. The first year, that vine might make it up to the wire. The second year, you'll get little clusters. I mean, by little clusters, I mean like 4 grapes. So do you know who gets to eat those? Me. I'm not even going to share with my kids. So why wouldn't you share with your kids? What'd they do? They didn't do anything. I'm the one that got the backhoe. I'm the one that dug the pits. I'm the one that put the posts in the ground. There's only 12 grapes. It's not like you can go to Walmart. It's not like I'm not going to give them any grapes. I'm just not going to give them any of my grapes. So I go around, I taste every one of those grapes. And every one of those varieties tasted different. We had yellow grapes, we had red grapes, and we had the best ones, which are called black Manuka grapes. If you ever get that, put one of those in your yard. Unbelievable. Black Manuka grapes. And then as these grapevines start to branch out, you prune them down to 2 branches. So you're looking for a stick, 2 branches. They'll grow 20 feet. You cut everything back, and you got this pile of stuff that's this big that's set aside, and then you got 2 little sticks, and you think, man, I just killed this thing. And so in the process of time, the second year, you'll get those little grapes. You'll eat those. Well, that was nice. Then the third year comes, and you get some clusters. You get some small clusters. And, these are enough. You kind of harvest them, take them in, and it's kind of a neat deal. Look what we grew. We actually grew grapes. That's pretty cool. And so you put them on the table, you eat them, give a friend some. The fourth year comes, and you don't get a few clusters. The fourth year, you're getting boxes. You're processing these grapes. You're making grape juice. You're giving them away. You're giving them over here. You don't want them anymore. You're just like, this is amazing. Because the fourth year is kind of the last year before it goes into what's called a production year. The fifth year, it takes 5 years for those grapevines to mature to the point to where there's enough volume, and each year it exponentially increases. Because what's happening is you're cutting the grape down on the top. It looks the same. It's getting fatter, but down on the bottom, those roots are growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. They're getting more of a capacity to take up water and nutrients and more of a capacity to produce. And then it's just focusing all of this on this little pruned vine, and it just produces this massive, 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 massive harvest. And you think, what does this have to do with anything? Well, you'll see in just a minute. So over time, what happens is as I'm walking through this vineyard, there's this vine that was girdled. What do you mean by girdled? I mean, I put a little string around it to hold it onto the vine, and I forgot to cut it, and it started to grow. And when I came back, it's like the vine was this big, but that girdling was there, and I had to get in with a knife and cut that off. It could kill that vine. And that vine didn't die, but every year it grew. That scar from being girdled grew. And I knew that vine. I could drive you to that vine today. There was this one on the end. It was a black Manuka. And it was where the faucet leaked, and there was more water there. And the drip from that water just made that thing grow. I mean, it was like a huge. It produced the most. It produced the best. It was the best. My kids would go sit under that vine and just eat the grapes from that vine. There was a pheasant that came into that vine and laid eggs in there. We had little baby pheasants running around from that. And one of our chickens escaped one year and also went under that vine because it just was a great protected place. And I could go through all of the descriptions. What happened is over time, I began to know these vines. These vines began to have I began to have an emotional attachment with these vines. Anybody that's gardened, you can understand this, especially if you've gardened trees. If you get into trees, something that's perennial, it's got a 15 or 20 year lifespan. You start to you spray these trees, you know which one's susceptible to rust, which one's susceptible to powdery mildew. You know what these are. And over time, what happens, and this would have happened in this passage, the husbandman, he's gone. Now the vineyard owner's gone, and the husbandman is there. And the husbandman is caring for these vines. And he brings these vines in, he shares these grapes with his family, and then the next year, the third year comes along, and they say, you know what, man, we could juice some of these, we could press some of these, we could preserve some of these. The fourth year comes along, and it's like, man, this is a lot, this is going to be great. And then they start planning what they're going to do with that fifth year's harvest. Because you know what's happened? Let me just stop for a minute, tell you another story. My cousin Troy, he's in management. He worked for U.S. West Quest, the telephone company, and he had each one of the drivers had their truck, and it's like, this is my truck. Well, he needed to have this guy do this particular job, and it needed the tools off that truck. So he came and he says, look, I need you to take your truck and bring it in. I need you to give it to this guy. And they lost their mind. They're like, no, this is my truck. So you know what my cousin did? He came in and he got a box. He said, okay, I want everybody to take the keys to your truck and hold them above your head. And when this box comes by, I want you to drop your keys in the box. So he goes, he says, when that truck's got your name on the insurance, it's your truck. When that truck's got your name on the registration, that's your truck. When you pay the taxes on that truck, it's your truck. When you pay the fuel on that truck, it's your truck. But until those things happen, those trucks are the property of U.S. West Quest, and I'm the manager in charge of this. And when I need that guy to go out with that truck, you're going to do it, or every day I'm going to take your keys, scramble them in a truck, and assign you some random truck. Now, I don't want to do that. But if I'm forced to, I will. You know what they called him? Satan. Was his nickname. When he moved from Denver to Utah, his name became the Devil from Denver. But he's right. But you know what the problem was? They were under the misguided notion that those trucks were actually their truck. Just like the vineyardist gets under the misguided notion that the vineyard is his vineyard. The ownership becomes to be muddied when the person spends a lot of time with the asset that they've been given a stewardship over. And let's read on and see what happened. And at the season, that 5-year mark, when it comes time, and now you see, the owner didn't care about getting a handful of grapes. He wanted to get boxes that could be sent to the wine press, and they can be pressed for that precious sweet juice that could be boiled down into syrup or made into other products. And, they didn't all turn that to wine. I can even in Zambia buy pomegranate syrup and grape syrup. And it's grape juice that's boiled down and it's preserved because of the high sugar content, just like a jelly or a jam. And they've preserved that. They have preserved grapes that way in Palestine since antiquity. At the season, he sent the servant to the husbandman that they should give him of the fruit of the vineyard. But the husbandman beat him and sent him away empty. Now, what's Jesus talking about here? He's talking about the nation of Israel being the vineyard. And he's talking about the owners of that vineyard being the leadership that God established over the nation of Israel. God established the scribes and the chief priests and the elders. Those were all institutions by God that God set up to govern his people. Amen? And then God sent some prophets. What did Jesus say? Remind me again, which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And the answer is they beat them all. They rejected them all. Because why? Because they didn't like the authority of God from the prophet coming in and telling people how they should live. And again, he sent another servant, and they beat him also, and entreated him shamefully, and sent him away empty. And again, he sent a third, and they wounded him also, and cast him out. Then said the Lord of the vineyard, what shall I do? I will send my beloved son. It may be that they will reverence him when they see him. But when the husbandmen saw him, what'd they do? Oh no, they reasoned among themselves. This guy has a legal claim on the vineyard. This guy has a legal claim in the vineyard. We also have an emotional claim on the vineyard. And in order for us to maintain our emotional claim upon this vineyard, we have got to eliminate this one that's coming, that's the Son. Is that not exactly what the chief priests and the scribes and elders did to Jesus? He came to receive for himself a kingdom. He came to be the king of Israel. He came to be the Messiah, and the ones that were supposed to usher in the kingdom of Israel unto him, what did they do? But they killed him because he was a threat to what? To their authority and their control over the nation of Israel. So they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, That why? The inheritance may be ours. Now he's talking in a parable about a vineyard, but in reality what he's talking about is the nation of Israel. They're holding on to the nation of Israel. And they're going to kill him so they can keep the nation of Israel. So they cast him out of the vineyard and they killed him. What therefore shall the Lord of that vineyard do unto them? He shall come and destroy these husbandmen and shall give the vineyard to others. What's he going to give the vineyard to others to? Who's he going to give it to? The local church. You're going to go from an administration where God is dealing with the Jewish nation as a people to now he's going to go to primarily a Gentile ministry where he's going to operate through this local church. And there's a giant change that's going to take place in the administration of the inheritance and the people of God. And when they heard it, they said, God forbid. And he beheld them and said, what is this then that is written? The stone which the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner. Of course, that's in our memory verse, isn't it? Whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken. You can fall on Jesus and be broken. Or, unto whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. You can fall and be broken or ground to powder. This is what Jesus is saying, and this is, of course, a picture of how nations and how people receive or reject Christ. So what do we have here? We have a bunch of people that are given assets, right? And then they're given authority over those assets, but not as owners, as stewards, right? And then when Jesus comes and says, all right, I want that asset, all of a sudden now there's rebellion because we can't give up that which we've been given steward over. So when God comes and says, hey, Brother Ray, yeah, I want to send you to Africa. I walked out and I looked at my 2 acres overlooking the Columbia River that I bought. There was nothing on that land. And I planted over 60 fruit trees. I had apricot trees, peach trees, nectarine trees, grapes, watermelons, cantaloupes. I had a whole production system. And I had just gotten these trees to the point where they're almost at 5 years. And right about that 5-year mark, Jesus comes in and says, sell it. Go to Africa. And I thought, what in the world? And here's what happened. I was so frustrated. I was so angry. Not at being called to Africa. I was excited about that. What made me angry is I had a shotgun. What am I going to do with the shotgun? I can't take it to Africa. I don't want to sell it because it was my grandfather's. What do I do with it? I put it in my father-in-law's gun safe, and it's still there today. I had all these tools in this wood shop. I love woodworking. Absolutely love it. I took a picture of the pulpit I made. I'll show it to you after church. It's at Brother Sturck's church over in Wenatchee. It's a spalted maple, hard maple pulpit. It's beautiful. And I could not sell those tools. Emotionally, I was so attached to those tools, I couldn't sell them. So I just told my wife, I said, just sell them. She had no idea how much they were. You ever go to that yard sale where there's a Porter Cable 3-horsepower router, and my wife sold it for $40? But I mean, it was irrational. Do you know why? Because I had taken control of the vineyard of my life. It was my life. But I was a pastor, right? I'm supposed to be all spiritual and everything. But you're human. That's right. And we all do that. Well, that's my time. God, those are my children. You don't understand. Stay away from my children, God. I don't want my kids. They could, look, my kids, I want them to serve God, but I want them to serve God in Washington State, preferably Western Washington, within 2 hours of my house so they can come over for Thanksgiving. Other than that, God, I don't want any part of it. I don't want them going to the mission field. And you'll fight with God over a vineyard you don't even own. Because it's been 18 years. And you've been watering that vine. You've been feeding that vine. You know where all the scars are on that vine. And you're convinced that that vine is yours. 100%. Whose other kid could it be? No, you don't understand. I've got my life figured out. I've got where I like to live. I've got my home. I've got my retirement. I've got my time. I've got my hobbies. I've got my sports. I've got my... And then all of a sudden God comes in and says, no, you're getting called up to active duty now. I'm going to move you over here. And all of a sudden now there's a big kerfluffle in your life. Because God's wanting you to do something you're not really willing to do. And it's shocking when this happens. It is shocking. It's so shocking because you're like, I was surrendered, man. I was excited to go. I wanted to go to Zambia. I was praying country to country across Africa, looking for the one that God wanted me to go to, waiting. And when it happened, man, I was so excited. But I didn't realize that in the process over here, I had some baggage. And I had to give up on the idea of having an orchard and a wood shop and all those things. I had to give up on all that. But now God's given me 2 acres in Africa. And I have 60 or 70 fruit trees on it. And I got trees there that I would have never been able to grow here. I've got figs, I've got oranges, I've got mangoes. Unbelievable stuff. And every time I like to just go stand in that garden. And I say, God, it's one of my favorite places in the earth. It's just to stand here in these bananas in the coolness that you've provided in this hot day. I don't want to just thank you for giving me an orchard back. But you know what? God could take that all the way tomorrow. But you know what? I'm okay with that. Because I know that I'll have another orchard in the millennial kingdom. A better one there. Because God's faithful. God's faithful. One of the problems we have in Africa is training people. We've got all these young people. This is so fantastic. Got all these young people. And I have this other missionary. He's been there. I respect him deeply. He's been there for 25 years. He's from Australia. He's a solid, crusty old independent Baptist guy. Great guy. I love him. He's like, yeah, brother, what the same thing. You get all these young men, and they're all excited, but then they've got to go out and get a job. Once they go out and get the job, they're going to find they can't stay there, and they're going to be scattered all over. We had the same thing. He's right. Once these young men that you saw in that video actually have to start earning a living, they're going to not be able to stay where that church is. They're going to be scattered. So what's the solution to that? You tell me. Bingo. So I got one guy selling printer cartridges. He's also working at selling these IDs, the first one, and it's working good. I've got other ideas to sell these different products, but you know what? I went to try to get doors for my house, wood doors for my house, just like this, only like out of rosewood or mukwa, just a wood door like that. Not a hollow one like this, because these are expensive. These hollow ones like this are expensive because they have to be imported from South Africa. The solid, pure, hardwood, rosewood doors are cheaper. Wow. Yeah, I know it's rough. So I go into this place and they're like, yeah, it's going to be 3 months before we can get you these doors. I'm like, 3 months? They started a woodworking company and they're booked out. Within 8 months, they've got a 3-month lead time on every single product. There's that much of a demand. And with 200,000 people coming into the city every year, you're probably going to need some doors, aren't you? So I built a house there so I could get out of the problem of rent. The rent's not the expense, it's the problem of they just raise it and raise it and raise it until they get completely ridiculous because they think you have money flowing out of your ears. So we got a little inheritance. We bought this little piece of property and I built a house. I learned how to build a house. And I also learned how to teach people how to build a house. So I started that training program with 2 guys. And these guys now can survive on their own. And then I thought, well, I could either pay an exorbitant amount for all the doors and the cabinetry in the house. Like the cabinetry is as expensive as it is here, which is ridiculous because your labor has no cost. So I did the math, just like I did when I built my first house here, and I realized I could buy the tools and build the cabinets for the cost of the cabinets. So you know what's on the way in China, from China right now? A brand new woodworking shop that makes the old one look like child's play. We're talking 8-inch joiner, 15-inch planer, spiral cutter heads. Bought it all from China. because they're the supplier for here. And it was dirt cheap. It's fantastic. And God's like, see? You know the problem I had here? I couldn't afford the wood. I'm not interested in building little boxes. I like to build furniture. And it was like $600 for the wood to build this a couch. Do you know how much the wood cost me in Zambia? Are there any woodworkers in here? Okay, I need you to step outside just so you won't hate me. I can buy an entire rosewood log. A log. The whole log. From that end of there to here. This long. This big around. Or this big. And have it milled and cut into planks for $100. Did I say that? $100. Do you know what 1 inch thick by 12 inches by 12 inches of that wood would cost the United States? $20. $15 to $20. It's basically bubinga. You ever heard of that? Bubinga? Go look it up. So what's happened? When I said, okay, God, you can have my life, He gives me all back. He gives it all back. It's better. It's better. Do you know what would have been really great? Do you know what would have been beautiful? If the chief priests and the scribes and the elders would have bowed their knee to the authority of Jesus Christ. And He would have said, come on, let me teach you. Let me be a disciple. Come on. Now, I'm going to really teach you how to lead the nation of Israel into true worship. Wouldn't that have been a great deal? But instead they killed Him. What are we going to do today with the vineyard of our life? What are you going to do today with the vineyard of your life? Young people, what are you going to do? Your life's a vineyard. It's given to you by God as a gift, but your life, if you're saved, ultimately belongs to God. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to say, God, whatever it is you want, I'll do it. I'll stay here. I'll serve here. I'll go to Africa. I'll go to Timbuktu, which is an actual place, by the way. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with all the things that God has given us? All the assets, all of the money, all of the retirement. When you're dead, what's all the leftover? What are you going to do with that? Are you just going to give it to your kids so they can fight over it, or are you going to give it and make a legacy so that people can hear about Jesus when you're in heaven? What are we going to do with the vineyard that God has trusted us as a husbandman over? What are we going to do with that? Are we going to fight God and hold on to it? Are we going to fight God? Are we going to do that? Or are we going to say, you know what, God, whatever it is. Do you know the 2 reasons why we don't do this? And I'll end. We don't trust God, and we think that what He's asking is unreasonable. There's another passage that talks about this. We don't trust God, and we think that what He's asking is unreasonable. Let me tell you this. What He's asking is not unreasonable. I mean, I got a good deal when I went to Africa. It's a great deal. I love it there. I love it. So fantastic. It's like Disneyland for preachers. You just get to walk around and everybody wants to talk about Jesus. I mean, that sounds like a great deal, and it is. I'm going to get to take young people and teach them how to run a wood shop. I'm going to be able to take young people and teach them how to weld and teach them how to conduct business and teach them how to sell stuff and order stuff and buy stuff. And all these young kids coming up, I'm going to start mentoring them on how they can be used by God to cultivate a vineyard. All those trees, I didn't plant those just for me. I planted them so if God happens to give me 100 acres out in some farm, I can take a young man, I can put him out there and say, look, I already know how to start a macadamia nut farm. I already know how to plant and run a pecan orchard. I can already teach you how to run mangoes, and I know how to deal with all the diseases and all the pests because I've already done it for 5 years. And then we can use that to do something that has never been done in the continent of Africa. And that is to raise up churches that have young men that are businessmen that can fund missions and reach the continent of Africa. Amen. So I get to do everything I love and serve God in the process. It's a pretty good deal. What are you going to do with the vineyard of your life? Let's all stand.